Pro Wrestling. You better believe it. Rob and Randy, now. Don't touch that dial. Bye-bye.
The 25th Hour Radio Show. We're talking to George the Animal Steele.
Hey, you, punk, George. No. Hey.
George.
Hey.
Okay.
What? You go.
My.
Now, wait a minute. You want to talk to George Steele or Jim Myers? There's two of us using the same body.
Can we talk to Jim for a little bit?
Hey, okay, bye-bye. Here's Jim.
Jim, what a fascinating and extravagant career you've had over the years. You know, you've been an inspiration for millions. Millions upon millions of people have watched you over the years wrestle. And how did you get your start? How in the world did you get into professional wrestling?
Now I'm going to blow your mind.
Let us have it.
Okay, number one, I was a football guy. I went to Michigan State. My knees were blown, and I had some other learning disabilities, you might say. So I struggled at Michigan State. When I got out of school, I was planning on going into professional football, but my knees were gone, and so I started teaching in 1961 for $4,300 a year.
Oh, wow. 2
children and a third one on the way. I needed a part-time job. I did all kinds of things. I delivered flowers on Valentine's Day and Mother's Day and those kinds of days. I umpired for, I think it was $6 a game, and we were struggling big time. And I decided to go out and get a job as a bouncer in a bar with a friend of mine, Dave Pierce. And I found out quickly that if you're having a couple of beers with a buddy, you don't get hired as a bouncer, which was a blessing. But David was a huge wrestling fan, big time. And he was telling me the kind of money that Walter Kowalski was making. So he talked me into calling Bert Ruby, the local Detroit promoter, at about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. I want to be a wrestler. I thought he'd hang up on me. I didn't even think he would answer the phone. And I'm sure he woke him up, but he invited me over the next day. And when I went over, he took a look at me. Now, you know what? I know what I look like. And when I knocked on the door, he opened the door, he took one look, he said, beautiful. I go, whoa, what am I dealing with now? And then I went in and met his mother, his mother-in-law, his wife, and his 2 children, and kind of relaxed. And then I know nothing about wrestling, not a clue. I might have watched it 2 or 3 times on television, but I really wasn't into it at all. It was not my deal at all. So he took me in and started explaining the business to me a little bit. And in the process, he asked me to take my shirt off, my jacket and my shirt. And when he saw the hair in my body and the thick chest, he went nuts again. Now I'm going, whoa, what's going on here? I didn't understand the importance of a look in the wrestling business. And since I was a teacher and I didn't want everybody to know that I was wrestling, we decided that I would become a masked wrestler, the student. So I ran around Michigan Michigan and a little bit of Ohio and occasionally Wisconsin with a mask on, wrestling as a student. I wore a cap and gown and then an all-red outfit underneath it. And eventually I was managed by Gary Hart, one of the better managers later on in the business. But we kind of started that together. And it really caught on. And so about 4 or 5 years, I was running around the state making anywhere from $25 to $50 a night, sometimes $65. I think the biggest night was $90. And I had no idea the kind of money that I could have been making. And but I was real happy with it because my family was eating a little better, and I was making more money wrestling, or as much money wrestling as I was teaching. In fact, probably a little bit more. And then I got invited to Pittsburgh one time. Bruno Sammartino and an entourage had come to Detroit, and he was wrestling Bulldog Brower. And in the process, they spotted me, and I was invited to go to Pittsburgh to wrestle. So when I got to Pittsburgh, I had my mask and my cap and gown and everything. They said, no. We don't want a mask, man. We want you. And so now I don't want to use my real name, Jim Myers, because I'm still teaching. And so we decided that we'd call me something else. And they were trying to come up with a name. And Johnny DeFazio, who is a wrestler and now a local politician in Pittsburgh, said, well, this is a Steel city. Let's call him Jim Steele. I said, well, I like Steele. Somebody else said George. So that half of my body's only about 39 years old now. And I started wrestling as George Steele. In fact, I did that first run in Pittsburgh, and we did real well. And then the next year, they were looking for new talent in New York, and I was suggested that I could maybe do well there because we'd done some good business in Pittsburgh. So I went into New York, and we had a great summer run. And at that time, they weren't running a lot of the arenas in the summertime, so we did real well. And that became my summer job for the next 20-some years. But I continued to teach all that time. I was teaching and coaching and wrestling part-time until 1990 or 86. I went full-time wrestling in 86 when the WrestleMania started growing and the business started getting so huge. And I'd already taught for 25 years, so it was time for me to move on. That was more than you expected, wasn't it?
How did your students take to their teacher?
Well, you got to remember now. You got to remember, back then we were in territories. So the New York and the Northeast television did not come into Detroit. The old Sheik's TV was in Detroit, and I wore a mask when I was in Detroit. I was still a student.
So you didn't let your students know about it. You kept it secret.
Well, what happened occasionally, a kid would move in from the Northeast, and he would bring a wrestling magazine in or something like, here he is right here, and he'd have all the kids gathered around him, and I'd walk up and they'd say, that's you, you're a wrestler. I'd look at it, and I'd kind of give him a strange look, and I'd say, first of all, I'd look at him and say, do you really think I'm that ugly? What are they going to say? And nextly I said, well, I guess I do look a little bit like that. But that guy's George Steele. I'm Coach Myers. And we kind of blew it off. Now, I think it was kind of in tongue-in-cheek for some of the kids, later on especially.
Now, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Now, you didn't take on the persona that everybody pretty much correlates with George the Animal Steele until later on, right?
Oh, when I first went into Pittsburgh and then New York and Boston, Philadelphia, I was the only heel that did my own interviews, and I did very good interviews. It wasn't, hey, you, ha-ha. I was pretty articulate and so on and so forth, and loved doing that. And then they decided they had to put a manager with me because after the second or third year, we were drawing big money, and they wanted to keep me in the program. So they gave me a manager so somebody could talk to me during the winter when I was gone back to teaching. I had, like the Grand Wizard at first, and I could be out of town, and they would still bring up my name and my persona. And then a few years later, when Vince McMahon Jr., and that's the big, the owner now, Mr. McMahon, I call Mr. McMahon his father, and I call the younger McMahon Vince, just so we don't get mixed up with that. And when Vince came aboard, the animal thing, see, the WWF never called me the animal. The fans started calling me an animal. And I'd get in the ring and they'd start screaming animal, and I'd get on the mic and say, I'm not an animal, I'm a people. And the more I did that, naturally, the more they responded. Finally, the promotion picked it up. I became George the Animal Steele. Once that happened, Vinny one time said, you're making too much sense for an animal. I was doing an articulate interview. And when he said that, he said, try it again. So I went, he said, that's what I want. I went, oh, crap. That's not what I wanted to do. But it worked out fine.
How now, Brown
Cow? That's funny there, too, because when we did that skit with Dr. Sippy Zip, Vince had a long poem wanted me to remember. And now I'm dyslexic, so that's a challenge. So he gave me this long, and he's waiting for me to recite this long poem. And so when it was time to do it, instead of doing the long poem, I went, how now, brown cow? And like you just brought it up, people to this day bring that up. And if I'd have done
I remember watching that, and it was almost like they juiced you too much, and you went back to being an animal.
That's it. They overdid it. That's pro wrestling. They always overdo it.
And you know what? I miss bumpers like that when they had that on wrestling, because they gave you a real insight into the character. You got to really know who the character was.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you something. Are you still? I know that every once in a while, retired legends come back and make cameo appearances. Are you still involved with the wrestling any at all, or do you stay in touch with any of the wrestlers?
They have a Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. You can check that out. It's the www.pw, Wrestling Hall of Fame. And I'm on the board. In fact, I was one of the founders of that. And that's not in competition with Vince's Hall of Fame. This is a totally different thing. This is a brick and mortar, the way it used to be, more like the territories than things are now.
Right.
And then I'm also, I did a cameo appearance with WWE, not this past December, but the one before. And prior to that, I'd been asked a lot of times, but because of their storylines way back when they were having fornication in the coffin and all that kind of stuff, I didn't want to take part in it.
Oh, yeah.
So I think they've cleaned up their act now, and that's why I did take part in it. And early on, like 2002, I had just accepted my faith, in the Lord Jesus Christ. And they were doing all those kind of off-the-wall shows, and they had offered me a contract, a Legends contract, or whatever you want to call it. And I didn't even send it back because I didn't want to be part of it. And now I'm working on a book, and I had to call them and ask for some pictures, which they certainly, supplied. And in the process, I was talking to this fellow, and he asked me why I hadn't replied, and I told him. He said, "Well, I tend to agree with you, but we've cleaned it up," and they have. That's why I went back in December. They have cleaned up their show, and I think it's a pretty good show again. It's more of a family entertainment than it was like 2002, 2005.
Yeah, it got kind of racy, didn't it?
Yeah, with the suck it and all that stuff. And so, yeah, I'm back with them, and I love it. I think they're doing a great job. I really do. It's unbelievable where they've taken the wrestling that I knew to where it's at now. I started in black and white TV, so there certainly wasn't any pyro or any of that stuff going on. And they've just taken, the production is out of this world.
I want to ask you a little bit of a personal question because
Sure.
I'm a family man and I'm a married man. How did your wife react to your character as the animal?
You know what? We've been married 58 years. And the fact that we're still married is unbelievable. It really is, because my lifestyle on the road was that of a professional wrestler, you might say rock and roll guy. And it was great for me because I was gone 3 months out of the year, then I'd come back and be a teacher. So I could get I kept a little bit of balance. But when I was out on the road, I ran wild like all the other guys. And later on, when I retired from wrestling, now I'm wrestling full-time, traveling all over the world at age 49, 50. So I was like a dinosaur running with the young bulls. They almost ran me to death. But fortunately, my family's still together. Me and my wife are really enjoying the twilight years, and it's just been wonderful.
Well, congratulations. Congratulations on that.
In fact, I had a lot of challenges. A lot of people don't understand that because first thing I hear is, "Oh, well, George Steele's got a college education. He must be smart." I had a learning disability way back when. I got a book coming out, and it's not so much, it's all about wrestling, how wrestling helped me become a better person. It really did. In the process of a lot of different things. And maybe a better teacher, a better football coach, a better wrestling coach, a better husband, I think, down the road, not at first, but down the road, and certainly a better father, and it's led to a better life, thanks to pro wrestling. I hear a lot of guys knock the wrestling business. The wrestling business is what you make it, and it's all about choices, and a lot of guys chose the drugs and all that stuff, and they paid a price for it.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people, think, well, the steroids. But really, the biggest problem that I see with the wrestlers, and not so much now because they've cleaned it up a lot, but was taking pain pills after matches and then having a couple of drinks and going to, bowing out.
Yeah, because, they're addictive. It's a big thing right now with pain pills. It's all, you see it on TV, it's doctors are prescribing, pain pills left and right to people, and people get hooked on that thing.
Well, guys, in the wrestling business, we'd be in a different town every night with a different doctor, and the doctors always liked the wrestlers, so they'd always give them a prescription, and they would run out and fill a prescription before they went to bed that night, and they'd have not just one, but they might have 10 different prescriptions that have been filled, so they may be carrying 20 pain pills of different kinds in their bags back then.
Yeah, that can end a career really fast.
Oh, it did, a lot of them, honestly, yes, it did.
You know, when fans would notice you on the street, did it surprise them in any way that you were, in, in real life,
It still happens.
it still to this day happens, right?
I live in Cocoa Beach, and used to be I'd be walking down the beach, and people would stop and look at me, and they'd come up to me, and some of them just look, not say a word. And occasionally somebody would come up and say, "Are you who I think you are?" Because they didn't want to say what they're thinking. Because if they were wrong, they might offend somebody. And that happens in airports. That happens every place I go. Yeah, but yes, they would always come up with that same look. Now I'm about 3 inches shorter than I was, and about maybe 60 pounds lighter. But I still got that beautiful face that they recognize.
So you think they're looking at you going, "Is that really George the Animal Steele, or is that some crazy guy dressing up like George the Animal Steele?"
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Let me ask you something. I have to ask you this. Who were your favorite wrestlers to work with back in the day?
I get asked that a lot, and I'm going to tell you, sometimes they ask me who the toughest wrestlers were, and I'll be very honest, it was guys who didn't know what the hell they were doing.
Made it rough.
No, the wrestlers that didn't know how to put a wrist lock on.
Oh,
They might be all pumped up, but they didn't know what they were doing. My greatest matches, honestly, go way back with Bruno Sammartino. We had every summer I'd go back in, and that's who I was wrestling all across the Northeast. And later on, I had a great run with Bobby Backlund, who was a totally different champion than Bruno, but a very good champion in his own way. And then the last run that I'm really remembered for is with Randy Macho Man Savage and Miss Elizabeth. And I'm still asked that question. Well, why were you chasing Miss Elizabeth? She was a lot younger than you. And I tell people, well, number one, Randy was very jealous, so that's good. And number two, my wife don't do windows.
Hey, you were the animal.
Exactly.
What kind of, and it's very sad about, Macho Man passing on, but what kind of person was he? Was he really, how he portrayed? Was he straight-laced like that, or was he a completely different person?
He was very, very tight-strung, a real professional, really worked hard. Him and I, we were married for about 2.5, 3 years. We wrestled almost every night. And like every marriage, we had our spats and our differences. But Randy was one that wanted to have a whole match laid out before he went in the ring, and I was just the opposite. I wanted to call the match in the ring because I'm old school. That's the way we used to do it. And so that was a little bit of a clash of the minds. It worked out, I think, pretty good. But I have a lot of respect for Randy. I knew Randy was a little boy. I wrestled his father.
Oh, the miser.
Yeah, before when Randy was still young and then getting into baseball. So I knew him for a long time. And also Lenny Poffo.
Yeah, and his name was Angelo Poffo, right?
The father was Angelo, and then yes, exactly.
Yeah, and they were in the ICW. That was not too far from, right? Was it ICW?
I think they were ownership, and it was in Tennessee area.
He was in ICW wrestling. They had George Weingroff and Leap and Lanny Poffo. They were tag team champions for a long time. And
yeah, that's right.
You had the Miser and all kinds.
How do you know all those people? You know more about them than I do.
Because I used to watch it every night. I love the intro music.
Dun, 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 dun.
See, when they started putting intro music, and I thought, what in the world is this, a dance?
Boy, they really got the hype going now when stars come out, don't they?
Well, it used to be in this corner. There was no music at all. And you went out doing. I made my own music, throwing chairs and screaming at people.
Well, now I've heard WWE's got an album where they go animal.
Yeah.
Animal.
That was for that other kid, the wannabe animal. What was his name? Big muscle kid a couple of years ago.
Oh, was it? What one yours?
No, they never played any music for me ever.
Oh, that's awesome.
No.
Everybody else had music but me.
Now, you were on the original WWF album, was you not, with Lou Albano?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. And then that's when Captain Lou Albano was managing me, and we had that song, and he was teaching about the drums and the music. He was teaching me about music.
Did you get to meet Cyndi Lauper?
Oh, yes, yes. In fact, we did a lot of different things with Cyndi Lauper. She was, I met her often and really I have great respect for her.
She seems like a very sweet person.
She was and is.
What about Captain Lou, man?
Oh, man, there's only one captain. Only one captain, and he was totally nuts half the time. Always very hyper. And it's funny because he comes from a family, I think his father was a doctor. His brothers were all school administrators and teachers.
Oh, wow.
And then there was Captain Lou, who made all the money.
I figured he probably came from gypsies or something.
No. They were highbrow New Yorkers.
So you were talking about Bob Backlund and Bruno Sammartino. Now, those are two names. Now, Bruno's getting inducted this year, right?
Both of them are.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to ask you. I was going to say, Bob Backlund also. I was watching a show or listening to a show the other day, and they was talking about 4 wrestlers that they think deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, and they were mentioning Bob Backlund, Bruno Sammartino, Randy Macho Man Savage, and maybe the Ultimate Warrior. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, Bruno is what the WWF Foundation is all about.
He should have been the very first one.
Well, he would have been, but he didn't want to go in. They've been trying to get him in for 15 years. I was in the second class in 1995. I went into the Hall of Fame. They would have rather had Bruno in there before me than that. But he just didn't want anything to do with wrestling.
See, I was under the understanding that when they first come out with the Hall of Fame, they kind of shunned him, and that's what kind of set him off a little bit.
No, not at all. Not at all. They wanted him. He would have nothing to do with them. He had turned his back on them. He was doing commentary after he retired, and there was some words, and there was a lot of anger, and he just hated where the wrestling business was going. Didn't want to have anything to do with that at all. Period.
Now he's finally. I mean, he went in Monday, didn't he? Didn't he go in Monday?
Well, no, they're going to go in at the WrestleMania is when they're going to have the Hall of Fame induction.
Oh, wow.
But he's accepted. He accepted it last Monday.
Didn't Triple H talk to him or something?
That's what they say. A lot of that is promotion, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's and Bobby Backlund should have been in a long time ago, but Bobby thought he was going to come back as a wrestler, I think. and then Randy Savage, probably, when he left the WWF, he broke Vince Vinny's heart. And I don't know if they'll ever get over that or not. He should be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion, but it's Vince McMahon's Hall of Fame. It's not mine. And anyone else that he wants to put in is up to him.
Whose idea was it to bring in the stuffed animal? Mine onto the scene.
You want a crazy story now?
Oh, yeah, we do.
This big deep. Do you remember the guy called Hillbilly Jim?
Oh, absolutely.
Hillbilly Jim used to travel with a unstuffed Earl the Dead Cat. And Earl the Dead Cat was an unstuffed animal. It was flat. It looked like a car ran over it. It had car prints on it. His eyes were across. His tail was bent. And every time he checked into a hotel, he would throw that on his bed. And my wife and I were in some town, I think it was in Alabama, and he said, "Come and see my girlfriend," or my friend. He didn't say girlfriend. I went in, and there was Earl the Dead Cat. And I saw it. I said, "Jim, I got to have that. I got to use it tonight. I got to have it. I got to have it. I got to have it." He said, "Go ahead, but give it back. Don't lose it." So I went on camera, and Mean Gene was interviewing me, and I'm doing one of those crazy interviews. "Hey, you!" And he's asking me about this opponent. I don't remember who it was even. And I kept saying, "Earl! Earl!" And then at the end, I pulled out this dead cat holding him by the tail and said, "Like Earl." In other words, I was going to make my opponent look like Earl the Dead Cat. Just trying to make people crack up. Well, the next day, Vince had seen it on, in the promo, and he called me and said, "What in the world are you doing, selling somebody else's, stuff? Why don't we make our own?" So he motivated me into going ahead, and I designed the Mine doll. I named it Mine because when kids fight over a toy, it's always mine. So we named it Mine, and we were selling them like heck. And this is just about the time I got real sick with Crohn's. ended my career, but I got about, maybe 6 months with that Mine Doll. And they were going like, I'd take it to the ring. It had Velcro on its hands, so I would put it around the Velcro, and it would be hanging under the ropes. And when we hit the ropes, it would swing around, and my opponent finally would, after I beat him up a little bit, he'd pick the Mine Doll and beat it up. And every time he hit the Mine Doll, I would sell it.
Like, the little Mine Doll was like a little voodoo doll, huh?
Yeah, well, it was like I was too old to take bumps, so I let the Mine Doll take my bumps, and I made the comeback. And then when I get my hand up, I'd have him lift the Mine Doll's hand. So the kids just loved the doll, the action figure. I guess it was called a mine, stuffed animal. But that's how that happened. It was just out of nowhere, really. Like everything else in my career. People ask me, well, why did you have your tongue green?
I was getting ready to ask you that.
Well, that's the next question always. And did we sit around in an office and say, okay, let's make his tongue? No. I had a couple of drinks. I didn't want the promotion to know it. I put a couple Clorettes in my mouth and went on live TV. Everybody's thought their TVs were messed up. Why is his tongue green? And they put that was in Pittsburgh, and the next Friday we had a show there, and they had these green tongues hanging out Pacific Arena all over the place. And I thought that was pretty cool. And about 3 or 4 months later, I thought, well, I'm going to do the green tongue thing again. And we got the same reaction. So from then on, I had the best breath in all of wrestling. Clorettes.
I wonder if that boosts the sale of Clorettes.
I don't know. No one knew how my tongue was there. I told some people.
Scared to ask, wasn't they?
Well, maybe you should contact that company and start promoting for them.
Well, I think they've already quit making them here. They still make them in Canada. And then the next question was always, well, why were you eating the turnbuckles?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'm used to being asked them, so I can ask them, And the turnbuckles come about. Used to be back in black and white TV in Pittsburgh. It was they would give away little gifts to come into the show, and this time they gave away stuffed pillows, little like couch stuffing pillows. And then when one of the fans got mad at me and threw the pillow at me, so now what am I going to do with a pillow? There's like 300 of them in studio wrestling, black and white TV. If I throw it back at them, they're going to bomb me with the pillows. If I sit on it, it's going to be boring. So I take the thing and I bite it. And it was packed so tight it exploded. And this little pillow stuffing kept coming out of it and out of it, and I was throwing it up in the air. It was sticking in my hair like my body hair, like the abominable snowman. And then I took the pillow and put it over my opponent's head. I don't remember who he was. I started choking him. Good TV, the choking pillow over his head, boom, boom. I pulled it off, and he was blue because the stuffing was lighter than air. And every time he took a breath, those stuffings went down the throat and into his lungs and almost killed him.
Oh, my goodness.
So I go back to the dressing room, and the boys are all laughing. Oh, you almost killed that one. If somebody threw a pillow at you, you might have something. And Tony Puglisi, Bruno's cousin, said, maybe you could eat the turnbuckles, and we all laughed. About 2 weeks later, I was wrestling Jay Strongbow in a small club, and the match just was not getting over. So I looked at the turnbuckle. It was the old Everlast turnbuckles. I thought, I wonder. So I went over to take a bite out of it, and it popped open easy. I rubbed that in his eyes, and from a boring match, we went into a riot stage. So from then on, I figured if I had a green tongue and could bite a turnbuckle, I might be something different. And that's what I'm known for, really.
How hard was it to bite into a turnbuckle? Because that's probably pretty tough material, ain't it?
Well, the old Everlast were made out of corduroy, and they popped easy. They really popped easy. Later on, they changed the turnbuckles a little bit, and the material was a little bit of a stretch. The first time they had the stretch material out there, I almost lost all my teeth. They pulled it up and pulled me right back like a cartoon.
Speaking of cartoon, your character's a lot like a cartoon.
But you know what? When they turned me into a babyface, I call it my cartoon era. And a lot of the old people that really hold wrestling in a high, almost a religious thing, really get hot at me because of the cartoon character. But at that point in time, wrestling was changing, and the cartoon character fit right into where it was going at the time. Even you look at Hulk Hogan and the greatest champion at the time, but it was almost like a cartoon character with Hulk. and so it was like, it was the times fit right. But I have people, nowadays say, well, why would you do that? Why would you do that? And it's very simple, to make money.
Oh yeah, the Hulk's character of hulking up, you know, at the end of every match. Yeah, yeah, it's exactly like a cartoon, like a superhero.
Popeye.
Yeah, exactly, and that's where we were going. And now they're settling back in and getting back to the wrestling, but they've already exposed the business in a lot of different ways. I think, which you know, when I first started, up until the cartoon character, almost everything I did was very kayfabe. We never talked to anybody about anything. In fact, I wouldn't be doing this radio show right now. You know, in 1980, wouldn't have done it because I was protecting the business.
Well, you know, you're talking about the business changing over the years, and
yeah.
it certainly has. What do you think? What would you say the most positive change is, and what would you say the most negative change is?
Well, I think the most negative change has already passed, and that's when they were doing the X-rated shows.
Yeah.
You know, I always looked at wrestling as kind of a family entertainment type thing.
Are you talking maybe like the Stone Cold era?
Yeah. Well, no, before him really, and after him too. Yeah, he was part of it. But Stone Cold, no, he was one of the better talents that they had. From you know.
You're talking about like the DX stuff and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And fornication in the coffin, they were doing that. They were doing gay marriages. They were doing all this stuff just in your face that you don't want your kids watching. And then they cleaned that up. So that part to me was the most negative. The most positive thing is that the boys now have a better way to travel. They, I think they're taken care of. I don't know if they have insurance yet or not. I doubt if they do, but they might. But it's, you know, they're on contract now. Back in my day, most everything till the last couple of years was on a handshake. And Mr. McMahon Sr., the guy that I worked with most of the time, his word was golden. I mean, I can't tell you, a handshake with him meant a lot, and I love that part of it. I'm so lucky that I broke into the business way back in 1962, black and white TV, and grew up with it, and was able to see it go into what it is now. And right now, there's a lot of guys, well, not a lot of guys because the territories are going, but there's a few guys making a whole lot more money than what they would have made a few years ago. And that I'm happy for. I'm glad to see the guys, you know, doing that. And Vince McMahon as a promoter has become very, very successful. And he's done a lot of good things for people. I look at the military, what he's done there, and I know that when kids are suffering from diseases and are get hit, automobile accidents and so on, they send them paraphernalia and toys. They don't charge. He's got a heart bigger than gold. But on TV, he doesn't want you to know that.
Right. Well, let me ask you a couple of questions. One, you were talking about the insurance. Is you know, and it's going to be crazy me asking this, is a professional wrestler hard to insure? I mean, is that something that they shy away from?
Well, some of the boys being the boys, had $1 million insurances with Lloyd's of London.
Oh, wow.
And so they had great coverage, but then they would work an injury and collect. So
yeah, I think I know where you're going with this.
Lloyd's of London quit covering them.
Well, all right, so the second part of this question is, do you feel they are controlling like enhancement drugs now for the wrestlers? Do you think they're cracking down on that?
Let me tell you, after I quit wrestling, 1989, I became an agent,
mm-hmm.
and I was part of the drug testing, and it was legitimate. It was serious. It was very serious because, first of all, we had a big court case, if you remember.
Oh yeah, and, I remember there was an indictment, wasn't there?
Absolutely. I had to testify in the same seat that John Gaddy probably sat in New York in the federal grand jury investigation, investigating wrestling. And that was a tough thing for me to do. But wrestling is just basically it's great entertainment, and we got to just remember that. I think I get a lot of people asking me, "Well, is this real? Is that real? Is that real?" Everything is what your mind wants to make it. When I started in the business and up until I quit, I said before that Randy and I had a different view on how to work in the ring. Everything was called. I never rehearsed a match. I always knew the finish. Always knew the finish. But everything else was for real in the ring. We called it in the ring, and we did it in the ring. There was no choreographing anything like that.
Well, have you ever been in a match with somebody and they just lost their mind and really got mad, and you had to take them down with a flying hammerlock?
Early on, when you have that kind of situation in professional wrestling, it's very unprofessional because you really cannot give the people what they're paying for. A shoot is usually a blood thing, and it's done in a very short period of time, and not very entertaining. Early on, I was a student. I'd been in the business maybe 7 months, and a guy brought he'd been drinking, and he was getting a little bit, cocky himself, brought a bunch of bananas and had them hid under the ring. Now, you know what I looked like. I had a mask on, my shoulders were hairy, I had a shirt, like a muscle shirt over the top, and so he brought these bananas out. The place went nuts laughing. I'm green. I don't know what to do with the bananas, so I took the bananas and gave him a banana bath. I shoved it every place I could. It was bananas all over the ring. It got very slippery, and then it was time to have a match. So in the process, I gave him my head, and he snatched the side headlock and tried to break my neck.
Wow!
Legitimately tried. So I did, the only thing you do in that situation. I went up to the crotch and tried to make a soprano out of him, and he loosened up a little bit, and we started working again. And then I gave him my head again, and he went a second time for my neck. And so he became a real soprano, and that once you give a guy 2 chances, there's not a third one coming. So I beat him like a redheaded stiff child. I mean, it was terrible. The fans didn't get their money's worth, but I bloodied him up. I beat the tar out of him. And then he come to the dressing room, and Bert Ruby was a guy about 50 years old, and he had a heart attack. And he come in and started on Bert Ruby because he was frustrated because of the beating he got in the ring. And he started jabbing on not Killer Kowalski, but Crusher Cortez was in there. And Crusher Cortez, this was in Jackson, Michigan. I'll never forget it. And it was snowing outside. It was cold, and Crusher opened up the door, threw the guy's suitcase and his clothes out, and said, "You get out of here. This room's only for men." Ooh. And this was the top guy with our promotion. I never saw him again. That was the end of his career. So, that stuff doesn't really help anybody.
Well, Jim, you're retired now. You're living the good life in Cocoa Beach. And what do you do right now for fun? What do you and your wife pass the time?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm Michigan State. I'm on the board of directors for their alumni club here. We have a lot of functions going on. We do a lot of things with the club. I've also, since in 2002, I had some serious health challenges, and I did a mainline flattened out. They thought I was dead.
Oh man, I did not know that.
And well, I got a lot of this will be in my book, and that's what led me to the Lord Jesus Christ. So I'm really tied up with our church now, and our church is the kind of church that we feed 1,500 families every week. And when I say that, we don't, prepare the meals, but they come on Monday, and we give them a week's supply of food. Because things are tough right now, as you know, in the States.
Oh, yeah, all over.
We have a pregnancy center, so if a gal gets in trouble, we help them out and try to prevent abortions and try to save children. And then we have a school K through 12, so there's just a lot of things going on. And I'm in a really active Sunday school class, and that's like my church family. And so we just got a lot of really positive things going on. And a lot of times we're just here at home enjoying each other, out on the deck and so on. I have to use a cane now. I can't walk the beach like I used to. But I do go down to our weight room, and I use a treadmill and those kinds of things. I work out a little bit every day. But I'm 75 years old now. I have people ask me, because I don't look that bad yet. They say, "Do you still wrestle?" And I say, "Yes." Yes. I wrestle to get out of bed.
That's what I was thinking when you said that. I was thinking the same thing.
Exactly.
Hey, can you tell everybody where they can get more information about you? I know you're a big Facebook fan. I know you got a website too. You mind telling our listeners?
My website is www.georgetheanimalsteel.com, and it's a pretty exclusive website. It covers everything. And then my book will be coming out in June, hopefully. and I'm looking forward to that. They're going to find out what really made the animal tick. I had a learning disability, so the only first success I had in school, guess what it was? Wasn't reading and writing; it was fighting.
Imagine that.
Yeah, so it all fits together, really, when you look at it.
And like I said, you're on Facebook a lot, right? I know
Facebook.
you're posting like 5 or 6 times a day. You're a Facebook fanatic.
Well, I mean, I'm retired. What else am I going to do? I have a George Steele fan Facebook page, and I have Jim Meyer's Facebook, and then I have some other ones too. They just the school where I coached for 25 years. Just last year, they named the stadium after me. Now that was humbling.
Oh yeah. I read about that. I should have asked about that earlier. Yeah, that was really cool.
That was humbling. That brings you down because I know myself, and I know I'm not really worthy of that. I mean, that's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, yeah, you are.
No, I don't know.
We know. We know.
You are. You should walk into that stadium and go, mine.
Nice.
You go.
Well, Jim, we had a wonderful time chatting with you today. You really made a moment for me and Randy that we'll remember for the rest of our lives. We wish you success in all your future endeavors, and with you and your wife, a happy forever.
Happy golden years.
That's right. The 25th Hour Radio